I was on my knees in the garden, pulling up the last of the summer tomatoes, when my granddaughter walked through the back gate, still wearing her backpack. She was supposed to be at the kitchen table with her afternoon snack. That was the rule. Come home, wash your hands, eat something, then come find me. She knew the routine. She'd known it for 2 years, ever since she came to live with me. But she came straight to me, which meant something was on her mind. "Grandma," she said, crouching down next to me in the dirt like she used to do when she was little. She was 9 now, almost too old for that, but she did it anyway. "Can I ask you something weird?" I sat back on my heels and looked at her. She had her mother's eyes, my daughter's eyes. I still couldn't look at them too long without feeling it somewhere behind my sternum. "You can always ask me anything," I said. She pulled a small plastic bottle out of the front pocket of her backpack. It was a vitamins bottle, the kind with the orange child-proof cap. The label had been peeled halfway off. "Miss Donna gives me one of these every afternoon," she said. "She says they're gummies for kids and that I need them because I don't eat enough vegetables." She turned the bottle over in her hands. "But Grandma, every time I take one I feel really sleepy and kind of fuzzy. And yesterday I fell asleep on the couch, and I didn't wake up until you came home. I don't like how they make me feel." I took the bottle from her hands very carefully, the way you take something sharp away from someone without startling them. "How long has she been giving you these?" I asked. She thought about it. Since maybe October, when it started getting cold. It was the 3rd week of November. I kept my voice steady. I told her she did the right thing, telling me. I told her to go inside, wash her hands, and that I'd make her a real snack. I watched her go through the back door, and then I sat there in the dirt for another minute, just holding that bottle before I got up and went inside. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the counter and stood there looking at it while my granddaughter sat at the kitchen table eating apple slices with peanut butter. I watched her chew. I watched her be fine. I told myself to stay calm until I knew something real. I'd hired Donna 2 years ago, about 3 months after my granddaughter came to live with me. My daughter and her husband had been killed in a car accident on I-90 in March of that year, a drunk driver who walked away without a scratch. My granddaughter was 7. She had no other family on her father's side, none willing to take her, so she came to me. I was 63 and I'd been retired for 8 months. I had a part-time job at a flower shop 3 mornings a week, just to get out of the house, not for the money, for the sanity. Donna answered my ad on the neighborhood Facebook group. She was 41, lived 2 streets over, had references from 3 families in the area. She'd been with us for nearly 2 years. My granddaughter liked her. She called her Miss Donna. I thought she was a blessing. I sat there looking at that bottle until my granddaughter finished her snack and asked if she could watch TV. "Of course," I said. "Go ahead." After I heard the television turn on, I opened the bottle. They looked like regular gummies, small, orange, shaped like little bears. I shook one into my palm. It didn't smell like anything unusual, but I was not a doctor and I was not a pharmacist and I did not know what I was looking at. I had a friend from church, Paulette, who had worked as a pharmacy technician for over 20 years before she retired. I called her. "I need you to look at something," I said. "Can I come over?" She said of course. She always said of course. That's the kind of woman she is. I told my granddaughter I'd be back in 30 minutes, that the door was locked, that I had my phone. I drove to Paulette's house with the bottle in my purse. She met me at the door, took one look at my face, and didn't say anything except "come in." I handed her the bottle and told her what my granddaughter had told me. Paulette examined it. She shook one out. She smelled it. She turned it over, and then her face changed. "Where did you say these came from?" "My sitter. She's been giving them to my granddaughter every afternoon since October." Paulette was quiet for a moment. She went to her kitchen and came back with a small paring knife. She cut one of the gummies in half and looked at the inside. She pressed it with her thumb. She brought it close to the light. "I can't tell you with absolute certainty what this is," she said, "because I'm not a lab. But I can tell you this is not a children's vitamin. The coloring is wrong. The texture is wrong. And based on what you're describing, the sleepiness, the fuzziness, falling asleep for hours, this looks like it could be an antihistamine, something like diphenhydramine, which is the active ingredient in Benadryl." I sat down. "An adult dose of diphenhydramine would put a small child to sleep for hours," she said. "It's not immediately dangerous in a single dose, but it's absolutely not something you give a child without a doctor's guidance, and you certainly don't give it to them every day without the parent's knowledge." She paused. "She's been giving your granddaughter this every afternoon." "For about 6 weeks," I said. "You need to go to the pediatrician tomorrow morning, and you need to call the police tonight." I heard myself say, "Okay," from somewhere far away. Paulette held my hand for a while. She poured me a glass of water. She offered to come with me, but I said I needed to go home to my granddaughter. On the drive home, I kept both hands on the wheel, and I did not let myself think too much, because if I started thinking too much, I would have had to pull over. When I got home, my granddaughter was asleep on the couch. It took me a moment to understand she'd only had apple slices and peanut butter. There was nothing else. She hadn't taken one of those gummies since the day before. She was just tired. A 9-year-old, asleep in front of the television at 5 in the evening. Normal, probably normal. I stood there and watched her breathe. Then I went to the kitchen and I started looking. I didn't even know exactly what I was looking for, but I started with the cabinet above the refrigerator where I kept things I didn't use often. Then the one under the sink. I went through the mudroom where Donna hung her coat when she was here. Nothing in the pockets, nothing unusual. I went back to the kitchen and sat down at the table with my laptop. I typed the name of the medication Paulette had suggested. I read about it for 45 minutes. I read about what it does to children's brains at repeated doses. I read about fatigue and cognitive slowing and appetite suppression. I thought about the last 6 weeks. I thought about how my granddaughter had been quieter lately, how she'd been slower to do her homework, how I thought she was just adjusting, still grieving. Kids take longer, I told myself. Give her time. I had given her time while someone was sedating her in my own home. I closed the laptop. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed and I stared at the ceiling and I turned the question over and over. Why? Why would Donna do this? What was she getting out of it? And then at around 2 in the morning, I thought of something. About a month ago, I'd noticed that a pair of pearl earrings was missing from my jewelry box. I'd assumed I'd misplaced them. My mother had given them to me and I'd been upset about it, that I told myself I was getting forgetful. I'd also noticed, around the same time, that $40 I'd left in the kitchen junk drawer wasn't there anymore. I'd assumed I'd moved it. I do things like that sometimes and forget. I got up and went to my jewelry box. I went through it piece by piece. My mother's pearls were gone. A gold chain my late husband had given me for our 30th anniversary was gone. A small diamond pendant, not valuable but meaningful, gone. I sat on the edge of my bed. She'd been putting my granddaughter to sleep so she could take things from my house. That was it. That was why. She wasn't cruel for the sake of cruelty. She had found an easy mark, an elderly woman, part-time hours, trusted access to the home, and she had made it easier by making sure the only witness was unconscious every afternoon. In the morning I did not call Donna to cancel. I called the pediatrician first. They fit us in at 8:30. I brought the bottle. The doctor agreed with Paulette's assessment and ordered blood work. She was kind, but her face was serious, and she gave me the number for a child welfare hotline and told me I needed to file a report. I filed the report from the parking lot at the pediatrician's office. Then I drove home and I called the non-emergency police line. The officer I spoke to was a woman, which I was grateful for. She told me to keep the bottle, keep everything, don't clean anything, and that an officer would come by that afternoon to take a statement. And then she told me something that I hadn't expected. She told me that there had been another complaint in my neighborhood. A family 3 blocks away had reported items missing from their home. They also had a part-time sitter. She didn't give me the name. She didn't need to. Donna was scheduled to come the next day, Thursday, 11 to 3, her usual shift. I sat with that for a long time. I called my neighbor across the street, a retired man named Pete who I'd known for 12 years. His wife had passed the spring before and he was home most days. I explained what I needed. He didn't ask many questions. He said he'd help. Then I went to the big box electronics store and I bought 2 small indoor cameras, the kind that look like USB charger plugs. I'd seen them advertised on the television. The salesman walked me through how to set them up and I paid attention. That evening, when my granddaughter was in bed, I set one up in the living room and one in the kitchen. They connected to an app on my phone. I watched the feed for an hour to make sure they worked. They worked. I also did one more thing. I went to my bedroom and I put 2 things in clear sight. On my dresser, I placed a small envelope with my granddaughter's name on it, and inside the envelope, I put 2 folded pieces of blank paper. On the nightstand, I set my late husband's old watch. It wasn't worth a great deal, but it was the kind of thing that looked like it should be. I'd worn it on a chain sometimes. Donna had commented on it once. Then I called Pete and told him to be watching Thursday from 11 onward. He said he would. I barely slept again, but I felt something different this time, not helplessness, something more like intention. Thursday morning, I dropped my granddaughter at school. I went to the flower shop. I kept my phone in my apron pocket, and I checked it every few minutes. At 11:12, I saw Donna come in through the front door on the camera feed. She let herself in with the key I'd given her. She went to the kitchen, put her bag down, and made herself a cup of coffee. Normal. At 11:40, she went upstairs. I watched her on the bedroom camera. She didn't know it was there. Go straight to my dresser. She picked up the envelope, looked at it, set it back down. She picked up the watch. She turned it over. She put it in her jacket pocket. I had already texted Pete. He was watching from his front window. He had already called the non-emergency line back as we'd arranged, to let them know things were in motion. I left work early. I drove home and I sat in Pete's driveway instead of my own, where Donna wouldn't see my car. At 2:55, Donna came out my front door. She had her bag over her shoulder and she was walking quickly, not running, but quickly. She got to her car, which was parked at the curb. The police car pulled up before she could get the door open. I sat in Pete's car and I watched. He didn't say anything. He just sat with me. Sometimes that's the thing you need most, someone who will just sit with you and not say anything. She denied everything at first. That's what the officer told me afterward. She said the watch had fallen off the dresser and she was going to put it somewhere safe. She said she'd never given my granddaughter anything, that my granddaughter must have been confused. She said a lot of things. Then they found the other items in her bag. The gold chain, a watch that belonged to the family 3 blocks away, a bracelet that wasn't mine and wasn't theirs, which ended up belonging to a 3rd family she'd worked for the previous spring. The blood work came back 4 days later. The results showed traces of diphenhydramine consistent with regular ingestion over a period of weeks. I sat with my granddaughter that evening and tried to figure out how to tell her what had happened in a way that wouldn't frighten her. She was 9. I wanted her to understand without carrying something too heavy. Miss Donna wasn't who we thought she was, I said. She was doing something that wasn't safe and it wasn't right, and she's going to have to answer for it. My granddaughter was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Is that why I kept falling asleep?" "Yes," I said, "that's why." She thought about it some more. "I knew something was wrong," she said. "I kept trying to stay awake and I couldn't." "I know, sweetheart, and you were so brave to tell me." She leaned against my shoulder the way she had when she was smaller. "I didn't know if you'd believe me," she said quietly. That stayed with me for a long time after she fell asleep. The fact that a 9-year-old child, in my home, in my care, had been afraid to tell me something was wrong because she didn't know if she'd be believed. Not because of anything I'd done, just because that's the world children live in sometimes. They speak up, and they hold their breath, and they wait to see what happens next. I was so grateful she spoke up. I am still grateful every single day. Donna was charged with theft, child endangerment, and administering a substance to a minor. The family 3 blocks away filed their own report. So did the family from the spring. Her case went to the county prosecutor. I changed the locks the same day she was arrested. I had the pediatrician do a full follow-up at the 6-week mark. My granddaughter's results came back clean. I do not have a sitter anymore. I adjusted my hours at the flower shop. My neighbor Pete watches her sometimes when I have an appointment and can't take her with me. She likes Pete. He taught her to play gin rummy and she beats him nearly every time, which delights her enormously. At Christmas, I found the pearl earrings. They'd been in the lining of an old winter coat I hadn't worn in years. I sat on my bedroom floor and held them in my palm and cried for a while. Not about the earrings, not entirely, but about everything. About how long my mother has been gone. About my daughter. About how quickly the last 2 years had moved. About how close I had come to not noticing. But I did notice. Because my granddaughter said something. Because she trusted me enough, just barely enough, to bring me that bottle and ask me a weird question in the garden. She saved us both. I think about that every morning when I hear her alarm go off down the hall and listen to her thump around getting ready for school. And I think that is the sound of everything being okay. Not perfect, not without grief, but okay and together and safe. And for now, that is enough. I keep coming back to the moment she crouched down next to me in the dirt. She didn't have to do that. She could have gone inside, eaten her snack, watched her show, and said nothing. Kids learn early how to say nothing. They learn that adults are busy or distracted, or that the thing bothering them probably isn't worth the trouble of explaining. She had every reason to stay quiet, and she didn't. That's the thing I want to remember most about all of this. Not Donna, not the bottle, not the cameras or the police car at the curb. I want to remember that a 9-year-old girl who had already lost more than most adults ever lose found the courage to say, "Something is wrong, and I trust you enough to tell you." There's a kind of honesty that doesn't come from being taught to tell the truth. It comes from somewhere deeper, from a child who has learned to pay attention to her own body, her own instincts, the quiet signal that says this doesn't feel right. That's not something you're born knowing. It's something that gets either encouraged or slowly pressed out of you, depending on who's listening when you speak. I think about whether I had always been the kind of grandmother she could come to. I hope I was. I hope she never doubted it. But I also know that doubt lives in children even when it has no real reason to. And the fact that she came to me anyway took more courage than I gave her credit for in that moment. Donna made a calculated choice. She found a situation that looked easy, a woman living alone, a child in her care, hours of unsupervised access, and she decided that her own needs were worth more than the safety of that child. I don't think she lay awake at night about it. I think she told herself it was harmless, just a nap, just a few things that wouldn't be missed. People like that are good at making their choices sound reasonable, even to themselves. But consequences don't negotiate with the stories we tell ourselves. What she did left a trail, in blood work, in missing items, in a little girl who kept trying to stay awake and couldn't. The trail was always there. It just needed someone to follow it. I followed it because she told me to look. I have thought a lot since then about what it takes to actually protect the people you love, not in the abstract, not as a feeling, but as a series of real decisions made under real pressure. It takes paying attention even when nothing seems wrong. It takes being willing to look closer when something feels off, rather than talking yourself out of it. It takes knowing that love without follow-through is just an emotion, and an emotion alone doesn't keep anyone safe. What my granddaughter showed me that afternoon was all three of those things at once. She paid attention to her own experience. She thought carefully enough to hold on to that bottle instead of throwing it away, and she chose to speak even when she wasn't sure I'd believe her. She did that at 9 years old, after everything she'd already been through. I don't take that lightly. I try to be worthy of it every day, to be someone who listens the first time, who acts instead of waits, who makes it easy for her to tell me the next hard thing and the one after that. She saved us both, and I intend to spend whatever time I have left making sure she knows it.